Good morning to my ICT1 students. So for today, we will tackle about the cognitive development of infants and toddlers. The expected learning outcomes of this lesson is where students will be able to identify factors that enhance or impede the cognitive development of infants and toddlers. The importance of this lesson is for you to know and identify factors that enhance or impede the cognitive development of infants and toddlers, especially in engaging infants and toddlers in some cognitive activities like learning to talk, interacting with toys, and identifying faces. So let me provide to you a glimpse of Piaget's observations of his children's cognitive development in infancy. This information is lifted from Suntrack 2002. At 21 days of age, Laurent finds his thumb after 3 attempts. Once he finds his thumb, prolonged sucking begins. But when he is placed on his back, he doesn't know how to coordinate the movement of his arms with that of his mouth. His hands draw back even when his lips seek them. So in the 3rd month, thumb sucking becomes less important to Laurent because of new visual and auditory interest. But when he cries, his thumb goes to the rescue. Toward the end, Lucienne thrusts her feet at the doll and makes it move. Afterward, she looks at her motionless foot for a second, then kicks at the doll again. She has no visual control of her foot because her movements are the same whether she only looks at the doll or it is placed over her head. By contrast, she does have tactile control of her foot. When she tries to kick the doll and misses, she slows her foot movement to improve her arm. At 11 months, while seated, Jacqueline shakes a little bell, then pauses abruptly so she can delicately place the bell in front of her right foot. Then she kicks the bell hard, unable to recapture the bell. She grasps a ball and places it in the same location where the bell was. So she gives the ball a firm kick. At 1 year and 2 months, Jacqueline holds in her hands an object that is new to her, a round, flat box that she turns over and shakes. Then she rubs it against her crib. She lets it go and tries to pick it up again. She succeeds only in touching it with her index finger, being unable to fully reach and grasp. She keeps trying to grasp it and presses to the edge of her crib. She makes the box tilt up, but it nonetheless falls again. Jacqueline shows an interest in the result, studies that it has a fallen box. At 1 year and 8 months, Jacqueline arrives at a closed door with a blade of grass in each hand. She stretches her hand toward the doorknob but detects that she cannot turn it without letting go of the grass. So she puts the grass on the floor, opens the door, picks up the grass again, and then enters. But when she wants to leave the room, things get complicated. She puts the grass on the floor and grabs the doorknob. Then she perceives that by pulling the door to her, he simultaneously chases away the grass that she placed between the door and the threshold. She then picks the grass and places it without the door's range of movement. So at this point, there are 4 stages of cognitive development according to Piaget. The sensory motor, the pre-operational, the concrete operational, and the formal operational stage. These were also discussed in Module 6. This module will focus on the sensory motor stage, Piaget's stage that covers the infant and the toddler's cognitive development. So here are the 6 substages of the sensory motor development stage according to Suntrack 2002. Sensory motor stage is the first of the 4 stages of cognitive development. In this stage, infants construct an understanding of the world by coordinating sensory experiences such as seeing and hearing. With physical motoric actions, infants gain knowledge of the world from the physical actions they perform on it. An infant pro and infant progress from reflexive instinctual action at birth to the beginning of symbolic though toward the end of the stage. So Piaget divided the sensory stage into 6 stages. The first stage is the simple reflexes. The age of this is the birth of 6 weeks. So, coordination of sensation and action were through reflexive behavior. These primary reflexes are described by Piaget: sucking of objects in the mouth, following moving or interesting objects with the eyes, and closing of the hand with an object makes contact with the palm or the palmar grasp. Over the first 6 weeks of life, these reflexes begin to become voluntary actions. For example, the palmar reflex becomes intentional grasping. Remember the other reflexes that was discussed in Module 12. Then the second substage is the first habits and primary circular reactions phase. The age for this one is up to 6 weeks to 4 months. Coordination of sensation and 2 months types of schemes are habits and primary circular reactions. Primary reactions because the action is focused on the infant's body. Circular reaction because it is a repetition of an action that is initially occurred by a chance. As an example of this type of reactions, infants might repeat the motion of passing their hand before their face. Also, this phase passive reactions caused by classical or operant conditioning can begin. Infants tend to repeat interesting sensations. Development of habits, infants become more object-oriented, moving beyond self-preoccupation, repeat actions that bring interesting or pleasurable results. This stage is associated The third stage is the secondary circular reaction phase. It is ages 4 to 8 months. Development of habits. Infants become more object-oriented, moving beyond self-preoccupation, repeat results, or repeat actions that bring interesting and pleasurable results. This stage is associated primarily with the development of the coordination between vision and prehension. 3 new abilities occur at this stage: intentional grasping for a desired object, secondary circular reactions, and differentiations between ends and means. So, at the third stage, or in this stage, infants will intentionally grasp the air in the direction of a desired object, often to the amusement of friends and family. Circular reaction of the repetition of an action involving an external object begin. For an example, moving a switch to turn on a light repeatedly means that a secondary action is focused on an object outside the body of an infant. The differentiation between means and ends also occurs. This is perhaps one of the most important stages of child's growth, as it signifies the dawn of logic, which is this stage. The third stage, which is secondary circular reactions phase. And now let's move on to the fourth stage, the coordination of reaction stage and secondary circular. This ages from 8 to 12 months. So coordination of vision and touch, hand-eye coordination of schemes, and intentionally. This stage is associated primarily with the development of logic and the coordination between means and ends. This is an extremely important stage of the development, holding that Piaget calls the first proper intelligence. Also, this stage marks the beginning of goal orientation. The deliberate planning of steps to meet an objective. The action is directed towards a goal. Then the fifth stage is the tertiary circular reactions, or the novelty and curiosity. The ages for this stage is up to 12 to 18 months. Infants become intrigued by the many months properties of objects and by the many things they can make happen to objects. They experiment with new behavior. This stage is associated primarily with the discovery of new means to meet goals. Piaget describes the child as the juncture, as the young scientist conducting a so due experience to discover new methods of meeting challenges. So, we'll move on to the last stage, which is the internalization of schemes or the invention of new means through mental combination. So, infants develop the ability to use primitive symbols and form enduring mental representations. This stage is associated primarily with the beginnings of insight or true creativity. This marks the passage into the pre-operational stage, evidence of an internal representational system, symbolizing the problem-solving sequence before actually responding. So, by the end of the sensory-motor period, objects are both separate from the self and permanent. Object permanence is the understanding that objects continue to exist even when they cannot be seen, heard, or touched. Okay, an analysis of the substages on the sensory-motor stage of Piaget's cognitive development shows that development begins from reflexive behaviors to more refined and more coordinated activities. Cognitive development of infants involved in orientation from becoming focused on themselves, becoming object or world-oriented, from one that is action-based to one that is mentally based, from one that does not involve much or coordination of schemes to one involving intentionally novelty and curiosity, from a thinking that is purely sensory motor to a symbolic one. So Piaget's substage are termed circular because the adaptive behavior to the world involves repeated action. Circular reactions are attempts to repeat an event that the baby likes. Circular reaction serves as the building blocks for intelligence, and this was according to Pasek, P. and Golinkoff, 2003. Acquiring the sense of object permanence is one of the infant's most important accomplishments. According to Piaget, object permanence is the understandable objects that continue to exist even when the objects are not immediately perceivable through the senses. Before the infant's acquisition of the sense of object permanence, the principle that applies it is out of sight, out of mind. There are some criticisms of Piaget's theory on cognitive development. One criticism from other development theorists is his fundamental assumption that cognitive development and context, because many theorists believe that cognitive development studies in the cognitive development of infants support the view of Piaget underestimated young infants' cognitive ability. Furthermore, Piaget's methods of research were said to be quite loose. The fact that he simply observed his 3 children and a few others, which were limited only to European children. So, learning and remembering. Do infants learn and remember, class? Okay, so the answer is yes. Pavlov's classical conditioning and Skinner's operant conditioning have been proven to apply to infants. Well, ask you to researchers that prove this. All of us experience infantile or amnesia, the ability to recall events that happened when we were very young. Generally, we can remember little or nothing that has happened to us before the age of about 5 years, and it is extremely rare to find someone to memories of significant events. For example, on our birth of a sibling or the death of a parent. In other examples, some adults have recalled their own hospitalization or the birth of a sibling as far back as age of 2 years, and the death of parent or a family move may be recalled from as far back age 3 years. So I have vivid memories of my childhood as early as age 3. Remember the death of a baby brother and a baby sister in a row. Before age 3, I have a vivid picture of my father carrying me home in his arms after he was informed that I was chilling due to a very high fever in my grandma's house. So this is an example of a learning and remembering, especially on we were young, like when we were in 2 years and 3 years old. Now let's move on to the language and development. From day one, infants appear to program to tune into their linguistic environment with a specific goal of acquiring language. Infants clearly have remarkable acute language learning abilities even from an early age. Within the first year of life, we humans seem to progress through the following stages, producing language. And this is according to Sternberg 2003. The first one is the cooing, which comprises largely vowel sound. Second is bubbling, which comprises consonant as well as vowel sounds. To most people's ears, the bubbling of infants growing up among speakers from different language groups sounds very similar. Third is the one-word utterances. And the fourth is the two-word utterances and telegraphic speech. Fifth is the basic adult sentence structure. It is actually presented by about ages 4 years old with continuing vocabulary acquisition. Now, class, have you tried to think what is the meaning of LAD? LAD stands for Language Acquisition Device. It claims that humans have an language acquisition device, which is a metaphorical organ that is response language learning. Just a heart that is designed to pump blood. This language acquisition device is programmed to learn language, whatever the language community consists and find themselves in. LAD means that we humans seem to be biologically pre-configured to be ready to acquire language. Indeed, children seem to have a knack for acquiring an implicitly understanding of many rules of language structures, as well as for applying those rules of new vocabulary and new context. This may partly explain why children are said to learn language fast. Professor Laura Ann Petito of Dartmouth College in Hanover and her colleagues conducted a recent study that concluded that by 5 months of age, babies are already specializing by using the left side of the brains for language sounds and the right side for expression, emotion. Well, we all speak out from the right side of our mouth. Babies babble out from the right side of their mouth. The right side of the body is controlled by the left side of the brain, while the left side of the body is controlled by the right side of the brain, or the connections in the brain are contralateral or crossed. Babies use the right side of their mouth for bubbling, then bubbling is a language function controlled by the left side of the brain.